Well, the Prime Minister claims the government is focused on winning the fight against inflation. He told the second annual Sky News and the Australian Economic Outlook lunch last month's budget was designed to reduce sticky inflation.
Our cost of living relief is expected to cut 3/4 of a percentage point off inflation this year and another 0.5% next year. I want to emphasise this. We are getting inflation down, not in spite of the help we are providing with the cost of living, but because of it.
Well, let's get the experts' advice on that. Joining me now is Judo Bank Chief Economic Advisor Warren Hogan. Warren, good to see you. Thank you. You were at today's luncheon. Will the government seriously win the inflation fight?
Well, the government may not, but the RBA will. And I think that was one of the other clear messages from the lunch from the Deputy Governor. But the Prime Minister continues to have this line that you can provide cost of living relief in the form of payments to households or subsidies. And yet the technical reduction in inflation will be the main effect, when, of course, it's actually the opposite. The provision of extra money into the economy through these subsidies adds to demand, adds to upward pressure on inflation. So, you know, it's technically correct what the Prime Minister says, but it's actually not going to really do anything productive for inflation other than reduce measured inflation, which the RBA Governor this week said she'll look through.
Now, look, speaking of, Australia's GDP has grown by just 0.1% in the first 3 months of the year. Warren, it just seems like the economy is barely growing.
It is barely growing. And of course, we have to put this not in the context of our history, where we would see this as terrible economic growth, but in the context of what our current economic circumstances are. And that is, we are trying to get rid of a serious inflation without a bad recession. And to do that, we have to have weak growth for an extended period. And that's exactly what we got here. This is the narrow path. This is the soft landing. People refer to it as a per capita recession. I think that's just a bit of trickery, really. The alternative to this is a recession, and we're not anywhere near recession, but yes, growth is soft. The other thing to note also is the economy is operating at its capacity. Everyone's got jobs, unemployment's low, and it's very hard to grow the economy when it's at its capacity. So I would actually characterise this outcome as constructive and all part of the plan.
You mentioned rates before. Why can't the RBA follow, say, Europe and Canada in cutting rates?
Our inflation's not coming down like it is over there. And that's really because we never put rates up as much, well, particularly Canada. But even Europe, which their rate went from 4 to 3.75%, given the underlying weakness of European growth compared to Australia, compared to the US or Canada, 4% is probably the equivalent of us having it up at 5.5%. So the point is, we're taking a slightly different strategy. We're being more gradual in the uplift and trying to have a less effect on employment. So we're not in any position to cut. We will lag. And indeed, it's still an open question whether we may need to tighten again in the next few months.
Well, that was going to be my next question. So we're not in a position to cut, you just said. Do you think that rates could indeed go up again?
Look, that is where, if there's going to be a move in the next 6 months, it's going to be a rate hike. And the governor essentially said that this week in Senate estimates. The Deputy Governor reinforced that again today at the Sky News lunch. And that really is, the strategy is different. And of course, our inflation is sticky, and we have to get rid of it. And the question is a 4.35% cash rate going to get the job done? It's just all up to the next inflation read. I think the governor's framed it as the Q2 CPI due at the end of July. If that's too high, they'll probably hike in August. Now, maybe that'll be it, and then we will see inflation come down. But there is still, I think, a better than even money chance of a rate hike in the next 6 months.
All right. Well, the government won't be happy about that. So perhaps no early election this year, depending on what happens with rates. Warren Hogan, great to speak with you. Thanks so much for joining us.